Good evening and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. At the bottom of the screen, as always, we have your best ways to get a forecast outside of our show. That phone number is a 24-hour forecast recording line. If you have internet access, you can also visit us anytime at weather.gov/Alaska for lots of weather and climate information. And that email address is your best way to get a hold of us if you have any questions or comments about the show. Heading straight into our hazardous weather because there is plenty to talk about coming at us over the next couple of days. We have a winter weather advisory in effect for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coasts. That's going to be through 9 p.m. on Tuesday for blowing snow. So not so much fresh snow falling, but the snow that's already on the ground blowing around due to wind gusts up to 50 to 55 miles per hour. That is going to create some visibility concerns impacting travel conditions. And again, that's through 9 p.m. on Tuesday. Heading further south to look at the impacts from our system that's coming into the Gulf, we have winter weather advisories in effect for the Bristol Bay Area north all the way to around Antioch. And that is going to be for snow impacting the area and again impacting travel conditions from tonight all the way into the day on Tuesday. We also have a winter storm warning in effect for the north and western Susitna Valley areas for very heavy snow associated with this system. Due to that upslope flow that we discussed yesterday, it's going to be looking at 12 to 24 inches of snow, with some localized areas seeing up to 36 inches of snow with this system. Again, that's for the north and western Susitna Valley areas. We have a winter weather advisory in effect right now through 9 p.m. this evening for the western Kenai Peninsula for snow and blowing snow. There is some snow falling, and the snow that's already there is blowing around with wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour, creating some visibility concerns, and travel conditions are impacted by that, especially during the evening commute today. We also have a flood advisory in effect for the Seward Highway area from Moose Pass down to the town of Seward itself. That's going to be in effect through the day on Tuesday and even into Wednesday a little bit, as we're expecting heavy rain to develop, with snow changing over to rain probably about as we speak in the Seward area right now, and getting heavier through the day tomorrow. So potential for flooding along the Seward Highway between Moose Pass and Seward. Further north with this system, we have high winds expected in the Alaska range, with a high wind warning in effect into the day on Tuesday, with gusts potentially up to 80 to 85 miles per hour. That's going to potentially create widespread power outages with downed trees. So definitely take precautions if you are in or plan to travel through the Alaska Range area. A little bit further north from that in the Tanana Flats, we're expecting some strong winds there as well, with gusts up to 60 miles per hour, which could bring down tree limbs and create some isolated power outages there. Taking a look at the southeastern portion of the state, lots going on here too. We have high wind warnings in effect for tonight into the day on Tuesday for the Yakutat and Sitka areas, with gusts potentially up to 65 miles per hour. Those winds are going to be capable of downing trees and power lines and causing widespread power outages. So definitely be prepared for that possibility if you are in the Yakutat and Sitka areas. We have a winter storm warning in effect for the higher elevations of the Haines and Klondike highways above Skagway and Haines and near the Canadian border. We're going to be seeing a lot of heavy precipitation in the area, and up at those higher elevations, a lot of it is going to end up being snow. So we're looking at 2 to 3 feet of snow at those highest elevations on the Haines Highway and Klondike Highway over the next couple of days. And for that orange area on the Panhandle, everywhere in the northern and central inside channels, we are looking at a flood watch that goes into effect tonight and lasts all the way through Wednesday night. We're going to be getting kind of a 1-2 punch with the winds, and then lots of heavy rain over the next couple of days, with 5 to 10 inches of rain anticipated over the next 48 hours for those northern and central inside channels. That's going to create a flood concern on small rivers, small streams, and creeks, as well as the potential for debris flows. So if we take a look at our satellite imagery, we can see the clouds associated with that system coming up into the northern Gulf. We've got that nice comma head shape developing just over the last couple of hours, indicating a strong, mature, low pressure system. North of there, not a whole lot in the way of clouds. That's where we're not seeing a lot of snow over the northern portion of the state today, but we do have those breezy conditions over the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coasts. So for our surface chart today, we can see that strong low pressure system, 962 millibars, centered near Kodiak Island today. That's going to start bringing that wind and snow into the southern third of the state. We also have a trough over the west coast that's picking up winds along the west coast and over the northern Bering and southern Chukchi seas. That's going to be creating a heavy freezing spray hazard for those areas, as well as the potential for some impacts from heavy freezing spray in Savunga. That's actually going to last all the way through the day on Wednesday. So a concern for heavy freezing spray along the northern Bering and southern Chukchi Sea, including the town of Savunga. Taking a look into tonight, we start to see that snow change over to rain all the way from Prince William Sound down to Yakutat and into the Panhandle, with that heavy rain starting from Yakutat further south into the Panhandle tonight. And heading into Tuesday, we will see more heavy rain from Prince William Sound all the way down through the Panhandle. So again, that flood watch is in effect for much of the Panhandle starting tonight and lasting through Wednesday night. For Wednesday, we'll finally start to see the precipitation on the backside of that low turn to more on and off precipitation, more showery in nature, but particularly for the central Panhandle, we'll continue to see heavy rain on Wednesday. Again, that flood watch is in effect, and we're expecting 5 to 10 inches of rain over this next 48 hours for the northern and central Panhandle areas. Taking a look at temperatures, we are slightly warmer than the last few days over the northern half of the state. Still lots of low temperatures for Tuesday morning in the negative single digits. Positive 3 degrees though at Fairbanks, and getting warmer as we head further south of the Alaska range. 29 at Anchorage, looks like 38 for Tuesday morning at Seward. Those upper 30s and 40s that we see all the way from the Kenai Peninsula along the Gulf Coast through the Panhandle are due to that rain moving into the area. With lots of cloud cover and rain occurring, the temperature just doesn't change that much. So overnight lows tonight really aren't going to be much cooler in those areas than the highs were this afternoon. Taking a look at Tuesday afternoon, we start to see that warm air moving into the Panhandle. It's going to be what's changing everything over to rain for sure, with high temperatures in the upper 40s to around 50 degrees. Even some temperatures in the 40s for the Kenai Peninsula and 36 at Valdez. As we look further north, we've got 19 at Fairbanks, looks like high a positive 4 at AKwx, and some teens along the west coast. For Wednesday morning, another warm one for the Panhandle, with that rain and clouds keeping it in the 40s. Some temperatures approaching 40 for the Prince William Sound area as well, and warmer up through the rest of the state, with most temperatures in the positives at least. And on Wednesday afternoon, we're looking at another warm day for the Panhandle, with temperatures in the upper 40s to around 50 degrees. Also another warm day for the North Gulf Coast, including South Central, with temperatures above freezing. Looks like 43 at Seward, 37 at Anchorage. Warmer air heading north as well, with 22 degrees in Fairbanks, and mostly positive temperatures even along the north slope, with 6 degrees at AKwx. We're looking at temperatures in the 20s for the west coast, and looking at 30s for the Aleutians, with 38 degrees at Kodiak.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to a look at your aviation weather, starting out with flying weather for Tuesday morning. We're looking at IFR conditions across much of the Gulf, stretching up to the northern Gulf Coast, including much of South Central, associated with that low pressure system that's going to be moving into the area. Those IFR conditions are stretching west to Bristol Bay and then north along the Yukon River all the way up to the Yukon Flats for Tuesday morning. Tuesday afternoon, not much in the way of improvement for the Gulf Coast area. In fact, some deterioration to IFR conditions for much of the Panhandle for Tuesday afternoon. We'll also see IFR conditions spread west across the North Slope to about AKwx and then out over the Chukchi Sea. For Wednesday morning, we still see IFR conditions across much of the Gulf from the Panhandle all the way up through Prince William Sound and the southern half of Kenai Peninsula down to Kodiak Island. Wednesday morning, that's going to be stretching up the western half of the state all the way to the North Slope and then eastward along the North Slope as well. So lots of IFR conditions for Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon, we finally see some improvement for the Bristol Bay and Alaska Peninsula areas to MVFR or even VFR for Wednesday afternoon, but we will continue to see some IFR conditions from the northern Gulf up through Prince William Sound and into the Alaska Range, up to the Yukon River and over to the Yukon Flats. Also IFR conditions for the northwestern portion of the state and Seward Peninsula for Wednesday afternoon. Pass conditions on Tuesday looking like VFR at AKwx and Adigan passes, IFR conditions at Lake Clark and Merrill passes, rainy pass starting the day at MVFR and deteriorating to IFR on Tuesday afternoon, windy pass MVFR during the day on Tuesday, Isabel Pass starting the day out MVFR and improving to VFR on Tuesday afternoon, Mentasta Pass VFR on Tuesday, Tanita Pass starting out MVFR and deteriorating to IFR conditions on Tuesday afternoon, Portage Pass IFR on Tuesday, and Chilkoot and White Passes both expected to be IFR on Tuesday. For freezing levels on Tuesday morning, we can clearly see that warm air coming up from the southeast into the Panhandle, even stretching across the northern Gulf to some extent. So we've got 2,000-foot freezing level stretching from Kodiak Island up through South Central and into the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains, 4,000 feet over the northern Panhandle, and then increasing as we head south into the Panhandle, so 8,000 feet over the central Panhandle, and increasing from there with our 10,000-foot freezing level well south of the Panhandle. For icing on Tuesday, we do have an area over pretty much the entirety of the Panhandle of considerable moderate icing. That's going to be above 5,000 feet and associated with those higher freezing levels and all of that moisture coming into the area. We also have large areas of isolated moderate icing above 1,000 feet for much of the mainland of the state and isolated moderate above 3,000 feet for the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula on Tuesday. Jet stream on Tuesday is very clear, coming almost due south to due north into the northern Panhandle, 165 to 170 knots. At 9,000 feet, we see our strongest winds in another strong jet a little bit further south than where the jet stream is, so right over the central Panhandle, 80 to 105 knots of wind at 9,000 feet coming into the Panhandle. We also have increased winds over the rest of the Gulf, anywhere from 40 to about 55 knots from Kodiak Island and the northern Gulf up through the Alaska Range for Tuesday, and a bit of a secondary jet out of the north just off the west coast of the state, peaking at about 40 knots, stretching from the Bering Strait down through the southern Alaska Peninsula. At 3,000 feet, we're also seeing very strong winds coming into the Panhandle, anywhere from 45 to 75 knots out of the south, a little bit of southwest, right up into the Panhandle. So strong winds in the Panhandle at all levels. We're also seeing 40 to 45 knots out of the south for much of the rest of the Gulf, and anywhere from 35 to 45 knots out of the north on the west coast of the state. For turbulence, we're seeing a large layer of isolated severe turbulence below 12,000 feet across much of the Panhandle associated with all of those strong winds. Also considerable moderate over the rest of the Gulf Coast below 6,000 feet.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us here today is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, GINA for short. And Eric, you frequently come on the show to tell us about these really cool things that we're doing with satellites over Alaska and how we can use these really awesome tools. But I'm thinking all the while there has to be a mad scientist somewhere working on the next cool thing in the satellite laboratory. What is being developed today?
Right. Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the boonies in North Dakota there, on Sunday after church, the old people, like my parents and their parents, would gather and have coffee and talk. And I kind of eavesdropped on them a little bit. And the theme of a lot of these conversations seemed to be, well, isn't it amazing what they can do these days, someone would say.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, I don't know, I was too young.
Right.
Well, now I'm old enough in the weather satellite business.
You can remember when.
The new generation of weather satellites, I'm starting to say, isn't it amazing what they can do these days? Because it's always improving.
Yes.
Maybe an analogy here is like television. Television started in black and white, then it went to color. Analog signal transitioned to digital here a number of years ago. Standard definition becomes high definition. Right. Well, weather satellites are changing too. First weather satellites went up around 1960, not that long ago. No. It's comparatively young science. And every time a new series of satellite is launched, we learn from the past, so the mad scientists decide, well, we could make the next satellite even better in such and such a respect. Yes. And now the United States is on the verge of launching, or in progress of launching, a series of new geostationary satellites that are better than ever before. Okay. Let's take a look at some of the previews of what these new satellites can do.
Peek inside the lab here, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll peek in, and here are some mad scientists and mad technicians dressed in bunny suits. This is, believe it or not, this is the business end of a weather satellite under construction in a clean room. You don't want a speck of dust on the lens of a weather satellite's camera. So this is done in a clean environment. They are building a geostationary satellite there.
Oh, cool.
This new generation of satellites, if you had to answer the question, why are these better? Why do we care? Okay. You could answer it with 3 words: faster, better, more. The new generation of satellites are faster than the older ones. The images are sharper, they're better, and there's more spectral channels. We'll talk about that.
Any one of these called Steve Austin? It sounds faster, better, stronger.
Yeah. You know what, though? These things cost more than $6 million.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're pricey. But they are an essential tool for the Weather Service to fulfill its mission of protecting lives and property.
Exactly.
You got to have the tool to do the job. And it helps all of us when we get the accurate forecast, the warning in time, and this is the tool. Faster. On left here, we see what the old generation of satellites could scan in 5 minutes. On the right, that's what you get in 5 minutes, the whole planet, or at least one side of it. So it's faster. That means you can take more images over a given amount of time and make smoother movie loops out of that. Because animating movie loops really helps you highlight a feature that maybe you can't see as well in a single image.
Absolutely does, yep.
Let's zoom into a small piece of real estate like Texas.
Sure.
And we can see here a satellite that has a 1-minute movie loop visible light. You can see thunderstorms boiling there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the rippling of the top of the thunderstorm. This is a fun movie loop. We're going to be able to see things like this more and more often because of the new satellites being generated. Some things are only evident in animation. So that's faster. Well, what's better? We're able to now have sharper imagery than before. The Japanese have a satellite that uses the same imager that is on the new generation of satellites that America is launching too. An imager, that's just a word for camera. It's the camera on a weather satellite. We have something called the Advanced Baseline Imager.
Sounds important.
ABI. It's important enough, it has an acronym. Everything's an acronym. Well, an ABI-like instrument is here over the Western Pacific, and we can see this color image. This is what a human eye might see if you were riding on the satellite. But it's a little bit fuzzy. With new technology, you can post-process the image taken by the satellite to highlight and sharpen some of the features. So this image here of the Western Pacific then becomes this image. Thanks to the processing techniques, yes, this is the newest technology. So we've got a new satellite that can provide better data than ever before. And on the ground, we can process it better than before as well to really sharpen up the imagery and to give us a better view of the weather than ever before. So faster and better and more. What do we mean by more? Well, on the older generation of satellites, the imager, the camera, had 5 slices of the spectral pie, visible imagery, infrared imagery, something we can't see from the human eye. A lot of different slices of the pie. We're going from 5. The new imager has 16 slices. Each slice has its own relevance. Some are best for volcanic ash, for smoke, for dust, for telling the difference between smoke and dust, which can look similar under some infrared channels, but other ones bring out certain things. All of these 16 bands are important. In fact, some of the mad scientists, they didn't want 16, they wanted 24. There's always more you can do. But that'll be the next generation of satellites. So now we say, isn't it amazing what we can do these days? And you know what? It makes you think, well, what's the future going to be like too? It's so important to be able to know what's going on now in the weather. If you're going to forecast the future, you got to know where things are now. And satellites are the way to see that, especially in Alaska, where we don't have as many observations down on the ground. The satellites fill in the holes.
Yeah, really important stuff. And I love hearing about what we can see right now, but I love thinking about what is possible in the future. It's amazing stuff. And since you paid for it, it's a good time to learn about it. If you'd like, check out the website at www.goes-r.gov. And as I understand, it's a really easy website to use.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information about what these new satellites mean to Americans. And it's the Weather Service's mission to protect lives and property, and this is the tool how to do it.
Cool stuff, Eric. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, and thank you for joining us right here in Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for a look at your marine forecast. Starting out with the sea ice edge, the big story today for sea ice is that we have a near continuous set of ice all the way from the Chukchi Sea down to the Kuskokwim Delta. The one exception of that is maybe the north side of Norton Sound, but that ice is filling in quickly, and it looks like Norton Sound is already 60 to 70% ice cover. Looking at the marine forecast for southeast on Tuesday, we have a lot of winds and very high seas for Tuesday. We are looking at winds 50 to 55 knots right off the coast of the Panhandle out of the south, and that's going to be along with seas 27 to 29 feet. So very big winds, very big seas. Even in the northern Gulf, we are looking at 25 to 30 knot winds and 18 to 20 foot seas. And for the inside waterways, anywhere from 25 to 45 knots of wind, generally out of the south and southeast, with gusts to 40 for the Lynn Canal, where those sustained winds are a little bit lighter at 25 knots. Heading into Wednesday, the winds come down a little bit, but still very strong out of the southeast for most of the Gulf, 45 knots and 27 to 30 foot seas. So the seas not really coming down at all in the Gulf on Wednesday, but those winds decreasing ever so slightly. For the inside waterways, still southerly winds 20 to 30 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas, but 13 feet for those southern inside waterways. For Tuesday across South Central, we are looking at some small craft advisory winds 25 to 30 knots out of the south and southeast, although big seas along with that 18 feet as this low pressure system that we've been talking about pushes into the area. For Wednesday, winds coming down just a little bit, 20 to 25 knots, and switching a little bit to out of the west and southwest mostly. Seas coming down ever so slightly, but still pretty high at 14 to 17 feet. For Tuesday for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas, small craft winds here as well, 20 to 30 knots out of the west and northwest, with seas 16 to 18 feet on the Gulf side and 6 feet in Bristol Bay, with 15 feet out in the Bering on the north side of the Alaska Peninsula. And for Wednesday, winds coming down just a little bit, 20 to 25 knots. Seas coming down for sure, though, 9 to 12 feet for the Gulf side and 7 to 9 feet for the Bering Sea side. For the Aleutians on Tuesday, we are looking at relatively light winds for the western Aleutians, 10 to 15 knots, increasing as we head towards the eastern Aleutians at 15 to 30 knots, generally out of the north there, and seas across the board 7 to 15 feet. For Wednesday, winds pretty consistent, although switching directions more easterly for Wednesday across the Aleutians, but still in that 15 to 25 knot range, with seas coming down a bit to 6 to 8 feet. For the west coast, we've got that trough over the west coast, which is bringing these stronger winds, so 25 to 35 knots out of the north. Again, that's going to bring a threat for heavy freezing spray across the west coast area of the Bering Sea. Along with that, we'll see seas 8 to 14 feet. And on Wednesday, winds decreasing further south in the Bering Sea to 10 to 15 knots, but staying elevated for Norton Sound and near St. Lawrence Island, 25 to 30 knots. For the Arctic coast, we've got some strong winds along the North Slope, 25 to 35 knots out of the east, and also 25 to 35 knots for the Chukchi Sea, stretching all the way down into the Bering Strait. Heading into Wednesday, not a whole lot of lower winds, but just a little bit, about 25 knots for the North Slope and 20 to 30 knots for the Chukchi Sea. Recapping, tonight we have that low pressure system moving into the southern portion of the state and bringing all that winter weather as well as winds and freezing spray, along with that trough on the west coast for the Bering Sea. Into Tuesday, we have that heavy rain starting into the Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. We've got that flood watch in effect for the northern and central inside channels for the Panhandle starting tonight and going all the way through Wednesday. So on Wednesday, continued heavy rain for the Panhandle will be the big story. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.